Thanks everyone for coming along to this I think the 13th webinar that SCAF have run, and this one is organised again by the Early Career Network, um, where we look to bring together people who are early on in their career or not too far in their career, and hopefully this is going to be of interest to people if you are early in your career, but also to the wider viewership. So, for those of you who aren't aware of what SCAF is, SCAF is the Scottish Alliance for Food, and in SCAF we look to make the Scottish food future one that is healthy and more sustainable, while also being culturally acceptable and socially and economically affordable. So within SCAF, there are lots of different activities that we do. It's organised into four broad work streams with two cross-cutting streams. And as I say, there's lots and lots of different things that we do in SCAF, from webinars like this to meetings to funding opportunities. So if you're not already a member, then I would strongly encourage you to join. And there's a QR code in the bottom right of the screen that you can scan just now. And if you don't have time to do that, then you can just search for the Scottish Alliance for Food, and you can find all the information to join there. So on to what we're doing today. So the session is run by myself, David McVeigh, and it's co-chaired by Maddie Sinclair from the University of Glasgow. And we are delighted to have Indy Kaur, who's the CEO and founder of the Plant Futures Collective. So this pioneering agency is transforming plant-based food and diets across the UK. And Indy works closely with stakeholders across the entire food supply chain, from manufacturers and suppliers to brands and retailers, and they develop innovative and commercially viable strategies that drive a more sustainable food system. So really relevant to the things that we do in SCAF. So Indy's united more than 100 businesses, retailers and advocacy groups around a shared vision of collective action. And Plant Futures has launched a world-first coalition of UK brands to amplify meat-free messaging and drive real change in the food system. So from strategy at Tesco to collaborations with Saatchi and Saatchi, Indy brings a wealth of experience in turning knowledge into real action. So with that, I will hand over to Indy.
That's great. Thank you for the introduction, and it's really cool to be here and meet everybody as well. So today's webinar with me is going to be about ideas to impact. So we'll talk about working across academia, industry and retail. And as Dave just said as well, I've had a really lucky experience with my career. I've been in the food industry for about 20 years, and I've worked in big FMCG like Cadbury and Mondelez and Nestle in research and development. So I did quite a lot of like food science work and worked with a lot of academics during that time and launched products. And then I moved into more strategic roles with Kerry Foods, which was a big own label supplier. And then most recently with Tesco, where I was developing the plant-based strategy. So that gave me a really great insight into more the retail and commercial world. I then launched Plant Futures in 2021. That was on the back of the insight that there's a huge opportunity within the plant-based food sector, but it's an early stage emerging category, lots of big questions, and it's difficult to answer those questions when you're inside your corporate day job. So I decided to come out of that, build an organization that could help answer the big questions for industry, join dots with various other research bodies, NGOs and academics to understand like how can we bring new knowledge into the food sector that can really help advance and help support the businesses that operate within it. So we're here really as a platform. We're all about collaboration for growth. So we're a collective organisation driving the adoption of plant-based foods through insight and network. We foster and nurture collaboration. We translate insights into action. And one of my big passions, especially when I was at Tesco, was like, we've got all these insights, and the new research I was doing the last few years was like, there's no point insights and knowledge sitting on your laptop. You need to do something with it. So that action and launching insights into action is a really important part of what we do. And then through that, we're able to launch these big collective campaigns. And there's one going live in Tesco tomorrow, which is exciting. So I'll tell you about that as well. So I'm going to share with you a couple of case studies throughout this webinar, which will help bring some of the ideas and ways of working to life. The work that I do is underpinned with plants, and plants matter. Like, we know that we have a UK diet which is just lacking in fiber. We just, as a nation and many other markets as well, nations, we're just not getting enough fiber in our diets. So plants provide fiber, and so we know that plants can provide a big part of the solution that we face in public health and the food system today. The problem with that, well, the good news is we've got loads of great innovation on the market, and we've had a really buoyant category and food sector, which is just full of entrepreneurs, innovators, scientists, academics, really pushing the boundaries on creating new and novel food. However, what we're seeing in the market right now in 2025 is like there's just this general slowdown. There's been a bit of a stagnation, and consumer adoption is lagging. So when you've got all of this really great innovation ready and ripe to go, retailers are putting products on shelf, but it's not, why is it not selling? Then we need to start asking some questions. And some people on the call may have already done some research into some of these areas. What we found was that in 2024, we found that there was this new consumer group, and they're called open omnivores. They were like this future flexitarian. So for the first few years of the plant-based category, and I use 2018 as like the benchmark, flexitarian was like a big word that was used to describe this consumer audience. They're sort of like they're meat eaters, but they're interested in trying plant-based food, and they're very health motivated as well, and sustainability motivated. We kind of like exhausted all of that group. I feel like we launched lots of products in the market which service the needs of vegans, vegetarians, flexitarians. So we've launched loads of new products, and the UK has done an amazing job in really meeting the unmet needs that existed before 2018. What we then found in 2024 was that actually the new growth is going to come from this new group called open omnivores. And we reckon there's 30% in the UK who are meat eaters, but they're just open to eating more plant-based meats, which is great because that's millions of people. So that was the light bulb moment for us. It's like, okay, cool, we need to do that. But then what we couldn't understand is like when you've got so many people saying they want to eat plant-based food and plant-based meats, and why is it just not happening? And you may have also have heard the intention behavior gap, but it is that gap of we all have really great intentions, but actually it doesn't always trigger into actual behavior change. And for actual behavior change, something else needs to happen. And actually, marketing plays a really key role. Messaging and how you resonate with certain audiences plays a key role as well. So there are levers that we can work with to help shift intentions and desires into behavior and action. So that's gap number one. It's like, okay, so we've got this huge population that are interested in reducing them, interested in trying plant-based meats, but they're not doing it yet. Okay, we've got this one gap. But then there's another gap, which is more industry related. And it's kind of like, well, you've got research, so we had the insight. How do we then turn that insight into actual action within retail and within industry? And I think sometimes this is the part that I've seen from my experience where there is just a bit of a sticking point. And I've seen it so many times, and my heart just drops sometimes because I'm like, there's so much knowledge and insight sitting within academia, but it doesn't always get translated into retail and action. And a lot of the time, it's just down to communication. And throughout this presentation, I'm hoping you'll start to get a sense of where that communication drops off and why that may happen. But we know that there's strong evidence for plant-rich diets. But for retailers, their focus is also like on sales trends and shopper behavior. But yeah, we'll come into that gap number two as well in a second. So, evidence-based, academic research brings important findings and knowledge to the surface. For example, health-related, how we can reduce chronic diseases, environment, lower emissions, There is lots of research around behavior change and increasing plant-based options in diets as well. But you may have experienced it, or I certainly have. The adoption in industry and retail of newfound knowledge can be really, really slow. Um, and then so we have this translation gap. So why do insights stall? One that I've experienced is that academic versus retail language is very, very different. And even when I've partnered with NGOs as well, it's that there's there's a big difference in terms of how retail as an industry communicate versus academia and NGO. And I'd love to explore this a bit more with you at the end as well. Um, can be misaligned incentives. We'll touch on that in a second. Limited frameworks for application. A few measurable outcomes. So kind of like understanding like what are the benefits for other people wanting to come in, get involved in landing some of the new knowledge that's been found. I won't ask it right now, but I'd be really keen to understand at the end when we do Q&As, like if you have any ideas or any other examples of where you've experienced this gap of you've got some really great solid work, but it's just not landing in industry, and it'd be good, yeah, it'd be helpful just to understand a bit more about your experience. Or vice versa, where you have seen it work as well. I think that'd be great to hear too. So on the retail side, so retail lens, retailers' priorities, for example, are profit margins and category growth. Retailers are commercial businesses. They also have shareholders to answer to, and market share and profit margins are a huge important factor for the businesses to be sustainable. So it's fundamental that they are. Shopper missions and convenience. So each retailer, they want to make sure they're getting it right for the shopper, for people that are coming into store, that they can find what they're looking for at the price point that they want. And then product placement and promotion as well. And the promotions are there to really help prompt trial, help drive volume. They're there to do different things. So, to drive change, the evidence that sits within academia must fit the retail logic. So, it must be able to translate into some things that are high on the agenda for retailers. And absolutely, health and sustainability targets come into it as well at the same time. So, that you've got the commercial side, and then you have the public health and environmental targets on top of that as well. So there are different ways. What I would say is that um, if you are in any conversation with retailers, just to be mindful of which team that you're talking to, because if you're talking to the marketing and commercial team within retail, that's a very different KPI, different metrics versus health and sustainability teams. As well. So I think it's just understanding that retailers, there's a huge number of people there. So if you're speaking to one person in one retailer, which team are they sitting in, and actually what are their objectives? And that will really help make sure that you're landing your insight and conversation with them as well in the right way. So with those two gaps, one is the gap around consumers and actually shifting their intention into action. And then the other gap is within industry, even before you get to consumers, how do we help industry absorb academic research and insights into an actionable way that it can be really beneficial for them? So how can we bridge the gap? So I'll take you through two case studies. One, and it goes from A to B, 'cause there's a flow to it. So case study one is that is all around the insight. So building on the open omnivore case that I've shared at the beginning, building on that, we found that New Insight, the Open Omnivore group, they had a different belief system to flexitarian. So this was new news in the food industry, like completely new news in 2024. Open omnivores they're just stuck and they need more information. They believe both that like a flexitarian, high amounts of meat might cause health problems, but they also believe a little bit like a closed omnivore who isn't interested in changing their diet, that lots of meat is nutritionally necessary. And because they're stuck and they're just conflicted, they don't know which way to go. So they don't do anything. And what we know then, and this is working with another academic, where I was able to understand the innovation diffusion curve in a bit more detail, and we were able to then overlay our research alongside the innovation diffusion model and just understand, okay, well, in that case, flexitarians are kind of like the early adopters. Open omnivores would be your mid-market, and then closed omnivores are your laggards. What I understand about the innovation diffusion curve is the chasm, and that's the most important part for innovation to diffuse, is that to cross that chasm, you must be ready and prepared for the next wave of consumers. And for us, for the food industry, the plant-based food category, to cross the chasm, it means that it needs to access open omnivores. But if those open omnivores are so conflicted in their belief around food, until we address their belief around food, we're not going to be able to reach them. It doesn't matter how much innovation we launch and how many products the retailers launch, we're still not going to access them because they're just too conflicted with, they don't know what to do. And then on top of that, we also had what a narrative that's been built in the food industry, which is that plant-based was a lifestyle and or an ethical choice. So it also became like this exclusive place, less and not as inclusive. So we can see in UK food culture that lots of meat has been said to be nutritionally necessary, and lots of dairy also nutritionally necessary. But what hasn't happened yet as a cultural norm is that it's not yet well understood that lots of plants are also nutritionally necessary. And plants come with fiber, they have lower cholesterol, you're promoting diverse proteins, you have vitamins and minerals and lots of more things within plants. So we haven't yet got to a place within the UK food culture where actually plant-based is seen as being nutrition necessary and tasty. So what we're trying to do is understand, well, how can we unlock both the open omnivores, but and also shift that cultural norm that plants are necessary. That's very difficult to do. So the way that we went about it was very much based on collaboration, because to face into these big behaviors, it requires collective action. There's no way that any one entity alone could ever shift food culture. So we ran a workshop. This is February 2024, and we invited 30 businesses, I think, across the food industry. We had 70 people all together in London. First time competitors and brands had all come together in the same space, and we had retailers there as well. And we spent almost a day together just for us to present our findings, and then also use it as a listening and brainstorming workshop to understand what could some of the solutions be to unlock these opportunities, opportunity within open omnivores. That threw out a lot of insight for us. I think the first thing was creating a platform for people to come together was incredibly powerful. And having a platform with all those right people in the room and sharing the same insight with them that made, in a way that made sense, was also very impactful. And you can see from my slides so far, they're really simple. I mean, there's not a lot of text, really simple graphs, but it is just the eye-catching charts, really simple storytelling and explanation that people just get, and they really appreciated it. And because the detailed thinking had been done prior to the workshop and we were just sharing the actual top line insight, everything just made sense. Like there was a logic and a flow to it, and we were able to communicate in a way that industry operates, like, and can understand and absorb. So that went well. So then but what came through was that there was just still more questions. And so we had this really, one of the outputs was, can we launch a campaign together? Can we all these brands, can we all come together? Can we launch a campaign that could help tackle some of the big issues that we have in the category on reaching this new audience? So to do that, we then went and did a bit more research. We then kind of did a bit more. We did some real in-depth behavior change research, and you may have come across the COM-B model before. If you haven't, it's COM-B is 3 parts to behavior change: capability, motivation, opportunity. And capability is having the physical and psychological ability to perform the behavior in question. Opportunity is a social and physical opportunity, and then motivation is the reflective and automatic. So reflective is the conscious, I'm going to go on a diet and I'm going to have diet low calorie foods, and automatic is I just really fancy a chocolate bar, so I'm going to do that. And so this is the first time this type of study had ever been done in the plant-based food sector, and it's still pretty new within food itself. So if anybody is doing behavior change, let me know because I think it's fascinating. And what it kind of came through was okay, so we tracked plant-based versus animal-based just so we had a benchmark of understanding what's culturally normal and then where does plant-based sit alongside something that's culturally normal. What we found was confidence and know-how, 45%, like only 45% of the UK population really know how to make a meal with plants, whereas it's more like 80+% for anything that's animal based. Nutrition and health, you can see from the green charts here, like versus the blue, it's just the gaps are huge. Like most people can understand the health benefits of animal-based food, meat and dairy, but they're not really understanding the benefits of plant-based food. And then when it came to social relevance, this was actually the biggest gap. It was, it really helped to give a sense of like what you do, what you eat is actually shaped by what your friends and family do versus maybe the power of one. So actually social clusters are incredibly important, and the way that we promote products, it has to be around the whole family, the whole household, the whole social cluster, not just talking to one person, because food is very social, it's very emotive, and I think some of that's been missed so far, and there's a big opportunity to go after there. And then the last one was habits. I mean, you can see here that habits just aren't formulating within the plant-based category. Like most people will buy meat or dairy habitually, but it's not the same for plant-based. And it's just really interesting when you see these insights in this way, benchmarked against a category which is culturally normal. How far, how much of an opportunity plant-based still has to go after. So then we spoke to a behavioral scientist, Richard Shotton. He's a really smart scientist and author. And his feedback to me was, in order to shift behavior change in the plant-based meat category, it's going to be make it easy, bring in social proof, have a trigger moment, and repetition, because that's something that can then enable habits to formulate. But social proof is a really great fast shortcut to getting people to do something. So it's like if there's a big long queue outside a restaurant, lots of people start joining that queue because it's a social proof element of it. Bandwagon effect, I love it. And then easy is just I don't know, maybe it's just us as humans. We look for things that promote productivity and are a bit more frictionless. So easy goes a really long way. So case study number two then is like how we then continued the journey. And now it was getting into the realm of, okay, we know we need to reach this new audience, open omnivores. We know we need to shift the cultural narrative. We're going to do a big campaign with all these brands involved. So we're going to need a new campaign idea, new advertising campaign idea. And we needed an idea that was going to be broad enough that lots of audiences across the UK, lots of different people across the UK it would resonate with them. We needed something that was unified, so all the brands could get behind it, and flexible, that it could be used by retailers, it could be used by brands, it could be used in press. So we brainstormed a whole rank of different ideas and different words. And we worked with a research agency called System One, who have a method which is System One thinking. So it's your rapid response, which apparently works really well in advertising. Fortunately, we found an idea that scored 4.5 out of 5, which is that top green one. Um, and only about 10% of really good advertising ideas get to that point. So I felt really confident that we had developed an idea which was meat-free, made easy, And that was the one that we should back versus other ideas that we tested. We then worked with an internal creative, and then it was like, okay, you've got the words, how do you bring it to life? And that's where we brought in some color psychology. And this is the creative we developed, and there's some logic which I can just talk you through. So we've got an issue around trust within the plant-based food category. Lots of people, we know 40% of the UK population have said that they don't know if they can trust plant-based meats. And that's a real problem because if you can't trust food, you're not going to eat it and you're not going to serve it to anybody else either. So blue is a color that's just seen as being trustworthy. And I just felt it's really important that we have blue in this campaign to signal like it's a food, we have the highest food standards in the UK, probably anywhere else in the world. So it's like food is safe. So yeah, so we thought we should have blue, and it had to be a vibrant color blue, so it was fun and engaging as well. And then yellow is it takes us away from the category norm of being green. And yellow is very happy, it's joyful, it's fun, exciting. And then we laid it with a textured spoon as well because we wanted to give that nod to taste. It's like it's really tasty. And that spoon also became the exclamation mark. So it's fun. Everyone's doing it. Join in. And that's the framing. That's how we got to the creative. And then what we were able to do, which was really smart, is then take the blue, easy, and the spoon, and then have it in lots of different colors. So every brand part of the campaign has their own logo and their own brand color. So then you end up having all of these different, the same logo, which is quite solid as a frame, and then rotating in in their own different brand colors. So there's a little bit of ownership then from the brand too. And then through this journey, we've had over 30 brands come together. And in May this year, we launched a beta test on Instagram. It was the MVP, classic MVP, minimal viable product. Let's get it on Instagram. Let's just see if it works. So each of the brands, we had an Instagram rota. Everyone was posting on Meat Free Made Easy. So if you go onto Instagram, you'll see the page. And within 4 weeks, we gained 1,000 followers. So apparently, according to Instagram, someone data, normally it can take 2 to 3 months to get that level of following within for a new Instagram page. So that was great for us. And this is kind of a little bit like how it looked. It's first time it's ever happened in the category. Brands were collaborating with each other. And what we found was that when three food brands came together, like Tofuko and Gosh, and they did a collaboration together, they're reaching a bigger audience than just by themselves. So this platform with 30 brands all talking about the same message and the same creative, making it really fun and exciting, we launched a really cost-effective marketing campaign and in a short sprint. So that was good. So the creative works, the message works, brands can execute it, and everyone was really energized by it. So we reached just over 1 million people in 4 weeks on one channel alone. And we had a really solid engagement rate of about 2.27%, which is smack bang in the middle of what you'd expect from Instagram. So we were quite happy with that. And our content had been seen by over 27,000 views. And it's likely that we were reaching a new audience within that Instagram profile. And yeah, there's lots of other research that went into it. And if you do want to see the full deck, I can send it over to you too. But what that led to is like all this really fun stuff. So then we ran a competition and we had other people kind of like free giveaways getting involved. It's like a really great way of like bringing a campaign to life. Don't think I've included now. So and then now what's happening? This week we're launching in Tesco. We've just launched it in. If you do pick up the Tesco magazine this month, you'll find Meat Free Made Easy in here on page 80. I'll just flick over to it. Should have had it saved. Yeah, this one. So you'll find the campaign, and then over the next few days, if you're in store over the next few weeks, you'll probably start seeing some Meat Free Made Easy posters. And then on Ocado as well, you'll see the Meat Free Made Easy promotion that's going live as well. And we'll now work with Tesco and Ocado over the next few weeks, do some in-store shops, do some message testing and optimization, and continue on into a 2026 campaign plan. So hopefully those two case studies have kind of helped shape what going from deep insight, which probably looks very simple on the slides, but there's a lot of thinking that goes into it, can then translate into industry action and collaboration. Um, so just to wrap everything up, and then we can hopefully open up to some Q&A. So a successful collaboration can drive change with shared goals and metrics. So we were able to align with what retailers and what suppliers and brands were looking for. We needed to drive growth into the category, and that was going to be tracked through sales and winning consumers, so winning with those open omnivores. Then clear and fast communication is incredibly important. The language of retail and brands is very different. It's really, really rapid, and the shorter the email example with the exactly really clear what's the ask, what's the question, and what approval do you need goes a long way. So making it easy and making any communication really clear and on point. And then practical and resource smart. So like food industry, although it's a very big industry and the numbers when you add them all up are huge, businesses operate at very, very thin margins. So we're able to demonstrate the value of coming together and working together and building a campaign together in a cost-effective way. So everyone's chipped in a little bit and it went further. So just being mindful of although food businesses have big numbers on them, margin, they actually operate at very thin margins. So any resource support is generally well appreciated. So what we do then, we're kind of working to connect academia, retail, and industry, translating research and insights into industry-friendly communication, galvanizing a cohort, listen and iterate, invest into trusting relationships, and then demonstrating growth and success by showcasing achievements as well. Yeah. So thank you very much. I hope that's been helpful and interesting. And yes, please do stay in touch too.
Thank you very much, Indy. That was really, really interesting. I think both the sort of broad point about how academics and industry can work together, but also the specific Meat-Free Made Easy campaign. I think both parts of it were fascinating for me. So to everyone, please do feel free to either pop up your hand or pop any questions you do have in the chat. We can pick them up from there. We did have a question sent in before we started. So Maddie, I think you have got that there. If you'd like to read that out.
Yeah, I do also have a few questions of my own, but I will ask the question that we got sent beforehand, and then we'll see if we get any questions in the chat. So the question that was submitted beforehand was, what is the impact of holding a PhD on employability, skill relevance, and career progression within industry and retail sectors? So big juicy question.
Yeah, great. I think holding a PhD is valuable. So we're working with a PhD student at the moment, and it's fantastic because like we're able to tap into like new areas which when you're inside industry is quite difficult to get yourself away from the desk job to ask really and dive into some of the big questions and actually have that space and time to explore the big things. With a PhD, what I would suggest is to get, if you're keen on working in industries, to get industry experience as early on as possible, and that can be through mentorship. What I do find is that it can be quite difficult to shift mindset from deep research and the way that papers are written to the way that a presentation is written and delivered to industry. So the sooner you can get experience about how to translate your research or any findings into an industry-friendly way will be really helpful and set you up for success within industry. And it depends on which part of the industry that you'd be interested in building a career in, because like there's different departments. The research and development department, for example, of Cadbury and Nestle that PhD, you're in a circle of PhD students at the same time as food scientists. But if you're interested in moving into the commercial team or marketing role, then learning that skill of translating insight into kind of marketing and commercial languages is quite, it could be a new skill to learn. So that would be my recommendation. Just depends on where you'd like to sit within the industry.
Great, thank you. And do you have any advice if people were looking to engage with industry during their PhD? I think that might be a bit daunting for some people, not really knowing sort of how to do that approach and how to make that ask.
It is, yeah, it can be quite daunting if you don't know where to start. For me, I've always really valued just going to networking events, but it also depends a bit about your personality as well and how comfortable, because that in itself can be quite daunting too. But if you do enjoy just naturally just going to networking events or conferences, there's quite a lot of trade shows that happen in spring and then autumn time within the food industry, especially like IFE, for example, in London. It's free to go. You can sign up, and there'll be lots of different talks that go on, so you'll be able to go to the conference part as well as the actual trade show part, and just kind of start building a bit of a network for yourself. LinkedIn is also great. It's great to reach out on LinkedIn with people that you might be inspired by or interested to just connect with. And most people within the food industry are genuinely just nice people. And they love hearing, it, and most people want to help and advise, especially if you want to talk about their careers or if you want any advice as well. So I think LinkedIn's a great way just to reach out as well. And if there's anybody in particular, you can also try and contact me if I can help foster something as well.
Great, thank you. So we've got a message or a couple of questions in the chat. So the first one sort of speaks to the nature of maybe trends, and this is a trend. So yes, Christina said, who is the target? We've seen bursts of meat-free, etc., come and go, but mostly for those who are affluent. Sugar substitutes also come and go, and as they don't sell. Is the innovation going to fail every time except for those influence, i.e. a specific group? So yes, about trends, but also inequalities, I guess, with that.
Yeah, it's true. And for some reason, yeah, and this is where it becomes a bit of a category positioning, because at the moment I do feel the category is stuck in a bit of an echo chamber where we're continuing to talk to more London-centric, more affluent, more educated people, and the category hasn't really figured out how to stretch out from that yet. And we can see that there's lots of potential, which is outside of that space, but it hasn't yet been tapped into. So that at the minute, what we do know is that there's opportunity with young men who want to actually explore plant-based, but they just don't really know how to or what to do. We know that families are interested in preparing meat-free meals, but they don't know where to start, what to make. Um, so there's lots of new things that need to happen within the category for meat-free to really stick. Because at the moment, yeah, I'd agree. We're caught up in a little bit of the echo chamber, but I think working more collectively will be able to break through some of these barriers. What has happened in retail and what doesn't work very well in food is in logic. So when I was at Tesco, we did drop the price of Plant Chef, so it was a bit cheaper to try and get over the price and affordability barrier. But it didn't make a material difference. So you can go into any retailer now and you'll get like genuinely get like a good, better, best hierarchy. So you can buy, I mean, at the moment, tofu, you can buy tofu in Aldi and Lidl for like £1, I think, or maybe £1.10 or something. And so there are lots of meat, like or plant proteins or meat alternatives that are affordable, but that sense of plant-based as being a bit more affluent, it's an ethical or a lifestyle choice, it's exclusive, it's not inclusive. That's still very much there and it needs to be broken. Yeah, we've got an opportunity to break into that. So yeah, more work to do, but lots of exciting things happening.
I think that that came through as well. Oh, sorry, Dave, what were you going to say?
Well, yeah, just I guess on that point, because you spoke about different groups, and I was just interested in your open omnivores. Have you looked at who they tend to be? Do they tend to be sort of demographically specific groups, or is it quite broad?
Yeah, it's actually surprisingly broad. Like it's more so like the less 65-year-olds. I think plus 70, it's kind of habits are really ingrained and refined. But yeah, it was really broad. It went across education level, it went across cities, demographic, all of that. Yeah, it was actually pretty broad. Surprisingly so. Yeah. But there was this little blip with young men, which was quite interesting and surprising. But what is happening, and we'll be running some qual groups in a few weeks' time, and what I'm particularly interested to understand is when we shift the conversation to fiber, and actually when people start to understand, or if people understood that actually plant-based meats are providing both protein and fiber and cholesterol free, does that start reframing things? And if you're really big into your fitness, is that going to now, we're no longer talking about meat substitute. You can still have meat. It's actually, we're providing another product, which is going to mean that you're going to get protein, you're going to get fiber, and you're not going to have, it's cholesterol free. So I think we've got a few opportunities just to pivot the category in some areas to access some of these new people.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I think that answers one of the questions that I had around sort of moving towards this cultural norm of plant-based foods as tasty and also necessary, and sort of moving away from the meat is necessary, especially because protein. So it seems that that would, yeah, certainly be part of that cultural transition.
Yeah.
But is there anything else? I mean, obviously, lots of things that probably need to happen to help us move towards this cultural norm. But is there anything that's sort of come out so far that you think is going to be integral in that transition of norms?
I think the social norm, I just saw fiber February, which I thought was quite cool. I want to try and see if we can make Fiber Fridays work, but I don't think many people would want to have fiber on a Friday night. So yeah, maybe more like down the pub instead. But I think social normalization will kind of take us a long way. And if we can find a way to market and advertise more inclusively to a whole household versus to an individual, that will it'd be interesting to see how far that can take us. And yeah, I think if we can find a way of marketing towards building more social norm, like tackling that social normalization part, because you can see it's the number one barrier. It's most people's friends and family. Like the social circle you're in is hugely influential. And we can see, like at university, there may be more people that have more plant-based diets, but as soon as you leave university and you go into the workforce, then your workforce actually is not um, as kind of like plant forward. Then it's kind of you just end up absorbing what your peers and what your workmates are doing. So yeah, I think looking at it from a bigger picture movement will be really interesting.
Yeah, great. That's really interesting insight. Thank you. So we've got a question from Muskan about collaborating with chefs. So they've asked, have you also collaborated with chefs to reduce the gap of knowing how to make plant-based food as part of this campaign?
I think actually to answer the last question from you as well, Maddie, I think chefs is like a great one to add on to that opportunity as well, because like chefs are at the heart of all of it. Like chefs at home and also chefs in restaurants as well. And chefs are able to build a really special bond with general public people. Like they're very well trusted, and you know that everything that a chef's going to serve you is something that they would eat themselves. So yeah, have we done any work so far? Chefs that sit within the brands, like Bosch, for example, the work that I was doing previously with Wicked Kitchen and Derek Sino, everything that we did was very much like Derek and chef led, which was amazing. And I don't think yet we're actively working directly with chefs, but I'm very keen to see how we can bring in more of that thinking. It's especially important with food service. So we have been working quite closely with Compass Group recently, which is all about food service, and they obviously serve a large part of the UK, who have a huge chef network. So it's kind of like understanding how do we do it. What we did do, which is quite a fun story to share, It's a piece of work we did with the MOD, so Military of Defence, and it was 2 years ago now, actually. But we partnered with an organisation called the Humane Society, who have just rebranded now, and Veganuary as well. And we did a training programme with the MOD chefs, which was across the Army, Royal Air Force, and Navy, and a one-day plant-based workshop, and it was phenomenal. So we had 24 military chefs come to the day at their food training center food training center. And the morning it was a bit like, okay, this is interesting. I'm not sure what we're going to learn here. It's all about plants. But by the afternoon, like the energy in the kitchens was brilliant. It was so exciting because they were learning all of these new techniques, these new ingredients that they hadn't had a chance to experience before, because traditional culinary experience and training is very much like French cuisine led. It's kind of meat, dairy, very technical at the same time. And then plants comes along and it's completely different. It kind of changes the rule book a little bit. So for the question, I think it's a brilliant question. There is an opportunity. And yeah, you reminded me actually the project we did with the MOD was a great example of showing how you can really inspire chefs and get them excited about it. So yes, yeah.
Great. Gosh, that sounds like a really interesting group to tackle, because you would think the MOD meals are probably quite sort of traditional British cuisine, maybe quite meat and dairy heavy. So that's really positive outcome. Yeah, to hear from that. That's great. We've got a question in the chat about dairy. So Mary Beth has asked if you can share your thoughts on a campaign targeting dairy, and are there any plans for campaigns towards dairy consumption?
So so we haven't yet tackled dairy, just because it's a bit of a different dynamic to meat, oats, or plant-based proteins. And so we've got loads. So the Combi research that I just showed you, we've done all of that survey, which is with 2,500 people in the UK, on dairy as well. So if you are interested in seeing the full deck, let me know and I can send that over to you. And it does go into all the different dairy categories. It's just, I think from a food industry perspective, a lot about the work that we do in terms of building a collaboration and coalition, there's a lot of needs to happen within kind of like nurturing a platform where people can feel comfortable to come together to want to work together. And so we've built that for proteins and for veg-led. We haven't yet set that up yet for dairy, and it's a different group. It's a different group of organizations, different buyers in retail as well. It's a whole different space altogether in a way. It would be interesting to run a campaign, but I think the barriers that we face with dairy is going to be quite difficult. And my gut feel is that dairy is, because it goes from infancy, and so it's a bit different to me, because your dairy is really, really ingrained in culture from when you're very, very young. So it's kind of, we need to position any campaign around dairy probably in a bit of a different way, I think. But what I would say is that brands are doing a really great job in Oatly, and the dairy alt category has done a brilliant job in normalizing plant-based milks, which has been inspirational for the meat alt sector. And within, they're a great case study of showing how you can normalize. And they went through coffee shops and baristas, and they built category equity with baristas. Just like chefs, they had baristas endorsing dairy oat milks, and people were actually paying more. Like we've got to have a category, they were paying more, like 50p more to have a oat latte instead of a dairy latte. So at the moment, for me, what's really interesting is leveraging what's worked really well in dairy oats, and then maybe over the next couple of years we can start thinking about how we can build more collective campaigns. I just know it's going to be slightly different in terms of the outcome. Like the campaign will be different to what we've done for meat free.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really really interesting point about that being a different area and maybe slightly more nuanced, and yeah, a lot of things to consider there. Yeah.
And what's also, I mean, margarine's a brilliant example as well, because margarine didn't position itself as a butter alternative. It was spreadable it was all about the benefits. And I think margarine, when it really went big in like the 80s, is a brilliant case study of like how you can launch an innovative product like margarine and get it into the masses and normalize it. So yeah.
I've got a bit of a broader question. I'm aware we're coming towards the end. So if anyone else has got one, feel free to interrupt me. But my question, you mentioned a few things around sort of when academics are trying to get out there and work with industry more, and some of the problems that they encounter. And I think one was that they speak a different language, and one was that industry might sort of not have the funds to actually carry out these ideas. But I was wondering if you had sort of a you know, are there things that academics tend to do regularly that kind of hurt their chances? Is there any sort of advice you can say avoid doing these things? Whether that be around language or whether it is they're actually seeking to do. Have you got some sort of top tips, I guess, that we could take away as
Oh, yeah.
academics?
Yeah, I guess so. I think it's such a good question. Because there's lots of nuances that go into it. I think the first thing that comes to mind really is just it's probably just presentation decks. Like food industry brands and industry retailers, we love looking at just simple slides, not too much text, nice pictures and nice graphics. And actually, having that goes a lot. You end up achieving more by having less on slides or on emails and having more, which can feel a bit counterintuitive sometimes, especially when some of the research papers are really dense and there's lots and lots of things that you want to get across. But there is a skill and a talent, and it takes a bit of practice, but kind of like taking the research and understanding. Okay, what is a buyer at Tesco what is gonna be the most interesting thing for that buyer at Tesco, or the most interesting thing for the head of sustainability at Tesco, like to understand from my research, like in 3 sentences or 1 sentence, for example. And it's not easy doing that. And I've had to do that quite a lot over the years. It's like ask yourself the so what, the so what, the so what. Okay, like, this is my research, but so what? Like, why would they care? And it does take a bit of back and forth, but even if you can just find somebody you can just spar with a little bit who's in industry, they'll help you shape that thinking. And then it gets easier over time. So yeah. And if you can, just take somebody out for a coffee and like really like listen to what's in their world, what are they being measured on, and what does success look like for them? Because if you can understand what they're being measured on, like what their KPIs are, then you'll get an understanding of like, okay, well, this is the part of my research that's going to be really important for you. This is how I can help you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was at an event a couple of weeks ago, and there was academics and non-academics, and one of the biggest differences was in the way they were kind of presenting information and just the
Yeah.
slides they had. It was a completely different way of communicating, it seemed.
It
Um,
is, it is, yeah.
so I think we have one more question in the chat, and I think probably we can finish after that. So it's from Laura, and she's asking about how we label plant-based products. So the term vegan sometimes carries negative connotations for consumers, and so how do you think product labeling influences perception, and do we need to rethink how we label vegan or plant-based products?
Yeah, I know, and we do. Yes, we do need to rethink it. We may not need to rethink it. We might just need to align, because I think the thinking's out there, but the alignment across industry isn't yet there. And we know that vegan turns some people on, it turns some people off. So I think we can definitely align like where does having vegan in front of packaging make sense? And actually, having on back a pack of vegan suitable for vegan and vegetarians is actually probably a better way to go than just saying vegan, suitable for vegans. It actually makes it more inclusive, even though vegan food is all naturally automatically suitable for vegetarians. So we've got some of that. What we haven't got is the alignment. Is the category, should we be calling the category meat free? Is it plant-based? Is it plant rich? Is it plant forward? Is it veg led? We've got all of this stuff going on. So I know there's been lots of research happening on messaging and naming conventions. And if we're able to somehow pull together the insights or the knowledge and then build the alignment across the industry, because I think the thinking is there. We just need the alignment. I don't think anyone's really I've not heard anybody say, "Yeah, we've got it right." I don't think anyone said, "Yeah, we've got it right." I think everyone that I'm working with across retailers and across the brands very much open for discussion and kind of like pinning this bit down because it's a really important topic because until we have alignment on what the category is and some of the naming conventions, it's going to be really difficult for shoppers. You can go into Tesco, Sainsbury's, Ocado, everyone will be calling the category something completely little bit different. Whereas if you've got meat, you've got eggs, you've got dairy, it's always the same language that's being used. So.
Yeah, I think it's something that we grapple with when we're sort of doing surveys and things about how we ask people about these foods, whether we label them vegan because then it's got the connotations, or to use one of these terms that they might not be as familiar with. So I think it's I think it's tricky for everyone.
And actually, that's a good point. Lots of people don't even know what vegan means. They, it's surprising actually. Most people don't know what vegan means. So yeah, you're right. So for some people, it's actually, yeah. So.
Well, thank you very much. I think just before we leave, I'll just I've got a couple of slides just to advertise some of the things that we've got come up as part of SCAF. So there's various different events that are happening in the next few months. Obviously, we've just had this webinar today, but there's lots of other workshops and the meetings that are going on. So if you're interested in any of them, please scan the QR code or visit the website. And there's also various opportunities, including the mentorship travel bursary, which allows you to connect with a mentor based in Scotland or sometimes in the wider UK to meet with them and discuss ideas. There's a rolling event fund that you can apply for if you'd like to run an event. And finally, the round for pump priming will be open in June, which seems like a long way away, but start thinking of the projects you would like to put forward for that now. So those are all things that are happening in the next few months. And just finally, just like to say once again, thank you very much, Indy. I know you're very, very busy just now, so we really appreciate your time coming here to share all your insights. As I say, really, really fascinating. And thank you very much. And thank you very much for offering people to get in touch with you if they would like to kind of find out more and about working with industry or about your work on plant-based foods. I think that's really generous. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. It's been great to have this opportunity.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.